everyone, MFPallytime here. We're back in Fallout 76 today, standing right in front of the vault itself, because I wanted to tell you guys a little bit more about my build and what my plans are for it. If you guys have been stopping by the live stream, you've seen it in action. It is a melee-focused. It's going to be fist-focused. I'm going back to punching. I think I just decided. And it's going to be focused purely on beating up my enemies and then eating their corpses to stay alive. The idea with this build is that I want to be very tanky, I want to punch stuff, and I want to be able to do it all without having to worry about my current stash of stim packs, anything like that. I just want to be able to go out into the wasteland, punch stuff, and be successful at it. The zero stress boxer build is what we're going for. That also happens to eat some people on the side. So, gonna be kind of a boring video. Maybe I'll show a little bit of footage, but I'm mostly gonna be going over the perk cards because that's the most interesting part for me. I've been doing a lot of theory crafting, trying to figure all of this out, and I think I've done a pretty good job of it whenever these level 1 robots want to leave me alone. And I just wanted to share that with you to show how in-depth the system can actually be. Now, the punching without combat armor may not be the best playstyle for a new character, but I've really been enjoying it so far. So let's take a look. So I'm on FalloutBuilds.com, and I am working with 15 points in strength, 15 in endurance, 7 in charisma, 10 in agility, 5 in intelligence, and 2 in luck. Currently none in perception. I would probably throw like a lock-picking thing in there to make this work. We get a lot of extra melee damage from strength, as well as increased carry capacity. We get an increased ability to sprint and HP from endurance, and we get more action points, AP, in the game with our points in agility. And I've spent a lot of time on this, and I really narrowed it down for what I wanted my character's playstyle to be, which is, again, being as zero stress as possible, killing an enemy, immediately eating them with Cannibal to get our health back as soon as possible, and trying to make it work around that. So this is not optimized for maximum damage output. This is not optimized for maximum tankiness. It's kind of a mixture in the middle with a focus on being able to survive without the use of chemicals, without the use of stim packs. Rataways, not really that big of a deal either, and trying to make it all work together. As of right now, I'm level 33. I'm on the right path to this, and it's been going really well. I've really been enjoying my time in the game so far. So I'll show you what I have now and show you what I'm also working towards as well. So Barbarian, every point in strength adds 4 damage resistance when it's fully maxed out. You can start picking this up at level 14. I have some broken armor right now, but if I go ahead and take Barbarian off, you could just see how much of an impact it's having on my survivability. So I only have 18 armor right now. Again, a couple pieces of mine are broken. I went out on a very long journey earlier and need to fix up my stuff. But 18 survivability again, and because I have 15 strength, if I go ahead and put this in, we're going to get 80 added on to our cap for our damage protection here, which is so much more. Just crazy. Just absolutely nuts. Then we have Blocker that I'm going to be picking up in the future. Don't quite have this yet. We're going to take less damage from opponents' melee attacks. This one is negotiable. If you wanted to go for a build that was focused on single-hand weapons, you could pick up a Gladiator in this spot, I think, and that would be totally fine. Incisor, I don't have access to yet. I'm going to be picking up next time my level. Starts at level 34. Your melee weapons ignore 75% of your target's armor. And this is going to be the controversial one, I think. I'm using Iron Fist here instead of Gladiator to increase our single-handed damage, or Slugger to increase my two-hand damage. My punching attacks are now going to do 20% damage increase. When I initially heard that Iron Fist was only going to have 1 upgrade, I was really discouraged. As you've noticed, I've leveled out a few talents down here, trying to figure out just what I wanted to do. Now, the damage of my Electrified Revolutionary Sword by default is 60, and this is a level 30 weapon. It's one of the best swords I have, in fact. One of the best swords I've been able to find. Now, I have not modded this in any way, more on that in a little bit, but it does 60 damage. I found it, it's electrified, that has a damage boost. If we go ahead and equip Gladiator which increases our single-handed melee weapon damage, and Expert Gladiator, then that's going to bring the damage of my sword up to 83. So a 23 DPS increase, a 23 slash hit increase every time we hit something. That's a pretty good upgrade. But you know what has more damage than that, and I find all over the place, and it's not a super rare sword, is the Death Tambo. Whenever I start killing Scorched, a lot of them started having these after I hit level 25. And the Mole Min Gauntlet that you can find down here at this excavator at the bottom of the map is also a pretty good weapon that you can start to farm after level 20. Now, prior to level 20, I could barely find any fist weapons at all. So maybe Gladiator is a little bit better at the beginning of the game, but what I find is that melee weapons so far, okay, again, I'm only at level 33. We're still doing a little bit of theory crafting here. So far, melee weapons scale better without mods than the standard single-hand slashing weapons with mods. Again, in kind of the middle levels, 25, 30. That may change as we enter the late game. There may be a godlike single-handed weapon. There may be a godlike two-hand weapon, like, for instance, this Vampire's Pickaxe that I found, which is amazing for survivability and does really good damage, too. That's a two-hand weapon. Well, I could scale this up with Slugger, and it'd be hitting super hard, but it's also significantly slower. What I genuinely think is no matter what you do, no matter which talents you pick here, you're going to be able to play however you want to. If, and this is a big if the iron, if the punching weapons, if weapons that scale off of Iron Fist still have higher base damage going into the later half of the game. If that changes and single-hand weapons start to take over, then Gladiator's going to be the place to be. But let's take a look at my Death Tambos. We had 6 perks dedicated to increasing the damage of this Electrified Revolutionary Sword, bringing you up from 60 to 83. We have no talents bringing this up to 88. It's at 88 by default, and it's 5 levels lower. If I go ahead and equip Iron Fist, this is only a 3-point allocation of our perks. It's going to bring the damage up to 105. So it just scales like crazy. It scales so much better. So if the base damage of these fist weapons continues to stay high, I think this build would work. If it doesn't continue to stay high, we can easily adjust to whichever weapons we like the most with the perk system. I just wanted to spend a little bit of extra time on that just to explain it a little bit more as to why I am doing that. Now, some people in Twitch chat were telling me that the martial artist does not work with fist weapons. Quite simply, it does. You can go ahead and count the frames in between attacks compared to one without the perk. And it's pretty easy to tell that that is significantly slower. So we are going to be getting a DPS increase even using fist weapons with martial artist slotted. Now, there is the Incisor talent that's going to be penetrating armor. It says melee weapons, just like martial artist does. Once again, assuming that Incisor does work with fist weapons, we're going to be fine. If it doesn't, we can easily pivot it and adjust. So that's our 5 points in strength, and I'm really happy with those points. It gives us survivability in blocker. It gives us a ton of survivability with barbarian, and then we have some really solid damage talents with martial artist, Iron Fist, and Incisor. And the endurance tree, this is where the flavor of my build comes from. We have the Cannibal talent, which allows me to eat dead humanoids to get some health back. Let me go show you how much healing I actually get really fast. It's pretty damn fun. So there's some pretty low-level super mutants over here. I'm just gonna let them hit me. I'm just gonna let them deal some damage. Hey, boys! You guys mad about that? I killed your friend! Huh? Alright, so we took a little bit of damage. To go ahead and take a look at my HP. As of right now, we are sitting at 85 out of 280. If you guys would not shoot me when I'm trying to be scientific about my build, that would be great. Oh, one minor thing about builds like this that you may not understand when you first start out is that in VATS, melee builds get a tiny little teleport. so it's really easy to stay on top of your enemies. If I go ahead and just vats in here, as soon as I get in range, I can teleport right up to them. So you can sprint right up on enemy players if you want to do PvP and start beating them up before they really understand what is going on. Now, you may notice that my arm was just broken at the top of the screen, and that is a problem because that does lower our melee damage a little bit. That is an issue, but we're going to be able to fix that with talents. So, before I die, let me go ahead and eat this guy. I don't know what our HP was going up from, but you can see the bar before, and you can see it after. As you can see, it's a pretty decent amount of healing. We're at 88 right now, 88 out of 280. If I go ahead and eat this guy. Wait, they're throwing grenades at me! Come on! I just killed so fucking many super mutants. Oh my god. Okay, 91 HP. If we eat this, we go up to 166. Not a bad increase at all. And you can do this in combat if you're taking light fire, and it's no problem. Now, there are some issues with Cannibal. So, Cannibal can only be used on humanoids, which means we're naturally going to be weaker to things that aren't a human, so animals and robots. But I didn't make the build to be the best it could be. There are ways of increasing your resistances to these energy weapons. There are ways of just using stim packs that allow you to heal through that a little bit more. But don't worry, we have workarounds for all of that. So, as I said, my arm broke, and that's a bit of a problem. Adamantium skeleton allows us to not take limb damage, which means we're going to be able to punch and run to our heart's content no matter how much someone wails into us. We also have lead belly, which is usually a talent that most builds avoid. But for us, it's going to make a little bit more sense. Cannibal gives you small amounts of radiation whenever you eat a dead body to get health back. And radiation in this game, how it works is the radiation is the red bar in my health. And that radiation does not go away without taking medication for it. So, as I would eat people to get health back, I was getting radiation put back in me that was lowering my effective health, even though I was filling up my health bar, which seemed a little it didn't work out too well. Didn't go that great. So, we pick up lead belly in this build to compensate for that. On the flip side, we can pick up ghoulish here. Radiation now regenerates even more of your lost health. I don't have access to this yet. We're just a little bit under it. I do have 3 points allocated into it as of right now in my build because I'm guessing this will be really good with a mutation. More on that a little bit later. I know this is getting complicated. This is already a long video. I'm working on it. I'm sorry. But ghoulish will play off of the radiation that we already have in our system to be healing us up in between chances we have to eat enemies. So, we're going to be getting passive healing in between eating without having to use stim packs or any other types of aid to keep us alive. And that's the whole point of the build. We're also picking up Ironclad, which is going to give us 30 damage and energy defense here, which is really good. Really, really good. Ironclad can go up to 5 points, which would give another 20. So what I was thinking with Ironclad is if Ghoulish turns out to not be super necessary, I was going to remove Ghoulish down to 1 talent point and then up Ironclad all the way to 5. That way we would still be within our 15 endurance window and we could see what works for us. Or alternatively, another point in Ghoulish and 1 less point in Ironclad. After you hit the level cap in this game, which is level 50, you still continue to unlock perk cards, so we could play around with the values that work for us the best. Next in the charisma tree, we have the Lone Wanderer. The Lone Wanderer allows me to take 20 less damage and regain 30 AP while I'm out adventuring by myself for a hefty cost of 4 charisma. I'm planning on putting another 3 points in charisma, bringing my total up to 7. The first reason for that is going to be the suppressor talent that we get at level 40, and this one seems strong. Reduce the target's damage output by 30% for 2 seconds after you attack. With as much as we swing this melee weapon around, which is another reason I want to stick with either fist weapons weapons or fast melee weapons, fast slashing weapons. With as much as we swing this stupid thing around, we're going to be able to keep this applied on our targets at pretty much all times once we hit melee range. But this is also a reduction for everyone. So if I hit an enemy that's attacking an ally, that's going to be reducing the damage that that enemy deals to my ally. So it's a team benefit. But let's just say that you play on a team all the time and you're worried that Lone Wanderer is not going to be for you. Well, take a note here, 20% less damage taken for 4 points. We could easily add in Bodyguard to accomplish the same thing as long as you play with at least 2 people. 12% damage from physical and energy, a max of 36. This doesn't count you, so if you have one more person in your party, that's going to be 12. In my case, I always play with 2 players, so that's going to be 24 damage resistance, which is going to level out quite nicely for me. But I do really like the Lone Wanderer for when I'm playing by myself. Like when I'm on stream during the middle of the day, my friends aren't around then, so Lone Wanderer makes perfect sense for that situation. Really, really solid town. I actually recommend getting this really early on in the game because with a build like this, your survivability should come first. Next in the intelligence tree, 5 points for Makeshift Warrior. This is where I think the slashing one-hand melee weapons might pull ahead of the fist weapons. If I'm able to get in there and mod them substantially, then I might be able to bring their base damage up high enough that they start to scale better than the fist weapons. I don't know for sure. I just wanted to add that in. I'm also picking this up for the 50% slower weapon break rate, which is super good for quality of life. Over in the agility tree, I do have talents like Action Boy, which is going to make it so our action points regen 45% faster. Being able to sprint is really, really useful. Speaking of being able to sprint, we also have the Marathoner talent. Sprinting consumes 20% fewer action points. This will stack with our endurance, which is going to be 15, which will also reduce the amount of action points we consume while sprinting. So both of those talents work really well together with this current build that we have. I'm also going to be picking up Evasive, which we're only going to get 30% decrease out of, but 30% is a lot. Each point in agility adds +3 damage and energy resist. So we're going to be maxing out at 30 as long as we're not in power armor. Everything I'm talking about, by the way, you cannot be in power armor to make it work. And once we get to the end of the game, I am going to be putting 1 point and only 1 point into adrenaline, because if you put 2 points in, it only scales up 1 more %. I mean, I guess on the high end, you do get more out of it, but I don't know. I don't want to justify that point. Maybe I will. I guess we'll see. But gain 6% damage increase whenever you kill an enemy, and this stacks up to 36%, so it stacks 6 times as long as you're able to continue to chain kills in between enemies. Usually enemies come at you in waves, so this should be a pretty easy 36% damage increase by the end of things. Also, a talent worth mentioning here would be the Moving Target talent. Gain 15 damage and energy resistance while sprinting. This is good while moving in between targets. This is not good while actually fighting targets. I find when I'm fighting a target, I'm not really moving much at all. I'm definitely not able to sprint at all, so I don't get much value out of this, which is why I opted to remove it from our tree here. We also have Starched Jeans at the end of the tree, our 2 points in luck. You will never mutate from rads, and rad away will never cure mutations. What does that mean? Well, in this game, there are mutations, as you may be able to have told from what we just saw, or from what we just said. One of these mutations is a healing factor. Health regen is increased by 300%, but chem effects are reduced by 55%. So things like stim packs and radaways and things like that aren't going to work as well. But your health regen is going to go up by 300%. This is why I'm not sure how much of a ghoulish we'll actually need. 300% increased regeneration for just having some rads seems like it could be quite effective and justifies us getting another 20 points of pure damage resist. Meanwhile, we have other mutations that increase our melee damage like crazy. Talons, 25% increased unarmed damage, +4 bleed damage, but -4 agility. I don't know if that agility loss will be worth if we are still using the evasive card. So that's something to keep in mind. All of these mutations have good sides and bad sides. But there's also one plus 50 damage, but minus 25, plus 50 damage and energy resistance, minus 25 AP. We have enough AP from our agility points that I think we'd be able to do that no problem. There are some in here that give us a poison aura, some that have a chance to irradiate enemies that attack us. Twisted muscles, gun accuracy is down by 50%. We don't shoot guns with this build, but we get plus 25 melee damage and increased chance to cripples. Like, there are some really good mutations in here for us to take advantage of, and we're able to do that with the starched genes. A lot of really cool options in there. And there are ways to pinpoint which mutations you get. It's just very expensive to make it happen. So that's kind of the build we're aiming for so far. I know this was like super boring looking at a fucking web page this whole time, but this build has a ton of potential, and I wanted to explain it for those that wanted to hear the nitty-gritty, in-depth explanation for why I'm taking what I'm taking, because it's not a normal build. You don't see very many cannibals out in the wilds, and when you do, it's you know, you assume they're a little weird, right? And this is definitely a weird build, but I think it's going to be super tanky. I think you're never going to have to worry about food. I think you're never going to have to worry about stim packs. I think you're going to deal a pretty sizable amount of damage and be the tankiest fucking thing you'll ever see. The only aid I need to carry around with me in most cases is just going to be water to refill my thirst. And if that doesn't encourage you, then, you know, it's not the build for you. And that's okay. There are tankier builds out there. There are harder hitting builds out there. This was trying to be in the middle as best as I can make it. So thank you guys for watching. I know that, like I said, this is super boring, but I appreciate your time. I appreciate you listening. And I hope a little bit of my insight will help you figure out what your plan in the Wasteland is going to be in Fallout 76. Because at the end of the day, that's all I was trying to do. I'm not expecting this to get 1 million views. You know what I'm saying? Just trying to help spread my knowledge of the game that I learned from experimenting, because these wikis aren't as good as they should be just yet. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you. I'll see you next time.